Welcome to the Wellbeing Room. Today, our guest is Julia Rossmanith. Julia is the mother of four children. She has a science degree majoring in anatomy and physiology and is a certified practitioner of the Arvigo techniques of Maya abdominal therapy, holistic pelvic care, and traditional Maya healing. Through her business, The Nurtured Womb, Julia has worked with thousands of women to help them bring awareness, connection, and healing to their womb and pelvic area. Bringing a wealth of life experience and empathy to her healing practice, Julia integrates the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical bodies, creating safe spaces for women to address the impact of unresolved issues and unexpressed emotions. See, I even stumbled over that word, on their physical and energetic well-being. Interestingly, Julia and I went to high school together and we recently reconnected. When I learned about the work she does, I was very intrigued and curious, and I felt called to invite her to join us on the Wellbeing Room today. Welcome, Julia.
Thanks, Leah, for having me here today.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. It's so good to be in this space. So, we have quite a few questions to get through, but I always like to sort of start with getting a bit of a sense of, I guess firstly, how you sort of stumbled into this practice. Maybe it wasn't a stumble, maybe it was a really clear path. So if you want to just give us a bit of a sense of, how you came to do the work that you do.
Yeah, so I've always had a real passion for the healing modalities. I did Reiki when I was 15, so I was really drawn to the hands-on healing. And actually, I had wanted to be a naturopath, and so that's what led me to do the science degree in the first place, because I thought, well, I'll do the science degree, so I've got that grounding, and then I'll go on and study naturopathy. And when I went to uni, I was just absolutely passionate about anatomy and physiology and learning about how the body moves. And with, I guess, being really drawn to the healing modalities, I was always really fascinated by how unexpressed emotions and stuck stagnant energy can influence and impact the physical body. And that's my absolute passion in everything that I do now. So that was one part, and then all my birthing experiences. So as you mentioned, I've got four children, and I guess my work's really been woven through my different experiences with each of the kids and becoming a mum. So, for example, my first pregnancy, I was pregnant. I knew that, you have a baby in your birth, but I don't think I'd really thought about the physicality of it. So I was at a birthing centre, and I remember looking through the photos that they had there and seeing women birthing, and I literally felt, I know that exact second, that I felt my body contract and my pelvic floor get tighter, and I think I went into absolute fear. So like I said, I knew that, you're pregnant in your birth, but I hadn't really thought about what actually happens physically and that you'd have to open up to birth. And that my daughter ended up being a C-section, and at the time, because at the time she was breech baby, and at the time they were just saying, okay, it's C-sections for breech babies. So then come to my second birth, or when I was pregnant, I really wanted to try for a VBAC, a vaginal birth after cesarean, and I couldn't find anyone really around here that would do it, and she ended up being breech as well. But this time, through the experience at the hospital, I was able to ask for skin-to-skin contact as soon as she was born, and then she came in with me while I got stitched up. So that was the next step. So with my first birth, I was separated from my daughter. And then I did a lot of work, I did a kinesiology, some study in kinesiology, and one of the things I did was something called NOT, which is neural organizational therapy. And I had my teachers come up, and they went through my body and were looking at all the things that would switch off when I recalled stressful events that had happened during my first two pregnancies. I really, really, truly believe that resulted in, or largely contributed to, my third daughter being always head down. So then I'd go to the hospital, and I had to really fight a lot because I'd had a C-section less than 2 years prior. So they said, you could die, the baby could die. And I thought, I'm just going to keep coming back to my body after every hospital visit and trust my baby, trust my body, and see I thought I'll let her show the way that she wants to be born.
Yeah.
And she was always head down. So I had a VBAC after 2 cesareans, which was
well done.
huge achievement, and I felt so empowered.
Yeah.
And then it came to my 4th pregnancy, and I'd moved back down to where we live now in the Northern Rivers, and I thought that it would be quite easy because I just had a vaginal birth to have another one, but I was told that that would be decided by one of the doctors or someone I had to see, and I felt so enraged actually, because I thought, well, hold on a sec, I might have had 2 C-sections, but I have had a vaginal birth after 2 cesareans now, so why not? And so I sought out a private midwife, and ended up having a home birth for my son, which was so beautiful and so healing. And I think, in between, my 3rd child and my 4th child, I really worked and looked at anything, like any emotions that were coming up for me, any fear, any places that I'd contracted in my life, any belief systems that may have shaped and formed the way that I'd previously birthed. And I remember actually lying, before I decided on a home birth, I remember lying in my bed looking through this birthing book, and I heard very clearly to have a home birth, and I hadn't even just considered it before. So, and when I was birthing him as well, I remember my midwife, she barely said anything to me, but I think I must have lifted out of my feet when I was when I had a contraction, like a quite strong contraction, and she just said, you need both feet on the floor to birth. And that's about the only thing she said to me. And I remember looking at the birth pool filling up and thinking, well, I can't get to a hospital now, so it's either this or this. Like, I don't have a choice. And so I visualised this beautiful golden light just coming through my crown and through my body and moving through to help my child be born. And he was born soon after that. And I think the first thing I said was, I could do that again. I haven't. I was stopped there. But I was thinking, gosh, I could do this again. It just felt, I think there was such a difference with feeling so deeply, deeply connected to my body in that birth, and that empowerment that comes with that. That was just so special.
No, that's.
So it's kind of seeing, like, watching and weaving, like, oh gosh, that's how. Look, this is what I had to do through this pregnancy, and then I came to this and I came to that, and that's what really helped me to feel really passionate about doing this with women, like looking at places where that we can expand and feel more connected, and then the flow that can come in our life as a result.
Yes, it's so important, and thank you so much for sharing that story about all 4 births. And you're right, there's so much disempowerment that we can get through the hospital system, through the medical system, that takes women's choice away, and where we often don't even see it, the opportunity to have a choice. Like it's almost like, well, you're going to have a cesarean, I'm booking you in, and I hear stories of women who, the obstetrician or whatever books them in because he's going away and he wants to book them in early, so we're going to induce you or whatever. And it's just like, how is that the right thing for the woman and the child? It's astounding that goes on.
And there is a place. I think that there really is a place for the hospital system, when it's needed, because it saves a lot of lives. But I think to take that choice away from a woman, or to teach her that someone outside of her knows more about her body than she does, is an unhealthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I have one child, and I had actually planned a home birth with her, but after a 24-hour labor, I did go to the hospital with my home birth midwife. She came with me, and thank God she did. But and by the time I got to the hospital, I was exhausted, and it was actually a godsend to be in the hospital, because all I had to do was just lie there and rest after the fact. And had I been at home, there would have been potentially pressure to get up and do something.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So there's a place for everything, isn't there? And in that case as well, you're listening to your body, and 24 hours tired, that's maybe all I can do, and then I need some help, or
yeah, absolutely. Lovely. All right. So that's kind of where you've ended up. So I'm
Yeah,
assuming from what I know about what you do, you work with women in relation to issues like fertility, menstruation, postpartum,
yeah.
even sexual abuse and trauma. Um, what a, I guess, that's a wide range of things. Um, how do you what sort of therapies do you offer? I guess I'm curious to hear more about the Mayan healing therapies that you've studied and practiced.
So I do something called the Arvigo techniques of Maya abdominal therapies. That's the long name, and that's a result of Dr. Rosita Arvigo, and she apprenticed with a shaman called Donna Lichio Panti. And so she brought the knowledge of, trained by him, and the knowledge that she had together and wove these techniques. And it's beautiful. It's based on bringing, I guess, the uterus into her optimum position in the pelvis. So it can go out of alignment for a number of reasons. And things like, which I find really interesting, is running on cement or even horse riding, because it's jarring, all the ligaments that hold the uterus in place. It's like overstretching, like rubber bands, you're overstretching the ligaments. Or coughing, like a lot of coughing, a lot of a lot of pregnancies and bearing down. So there's quite wearing high heels, which I always think, oh, that's a really interesting one too. So all these things that can move the uterus out of our optimum alignment, and when that happens, it means that we're not going to have the best, like, optimum blood flow to and from the pelvic area. And then we can have a stagnation of energy, stagnation of blood, and that can be a result of stagnation of emotional issues. So Rosita says, which I love this, is your issues are in your tissues. So often, things that have happened in our pelvic area, and that could be, if you were smacked, there's a lot of kids that were smacked as a child, or when there's been rape, or there's been a hard birth or a traumatic birthing experience. That sort of thing can impact, that the level of stagnation or the level of movement, in the pelvis. So it looks at that, and then the other bit it looks like it as well is the digestive system. So it helps, the techniques help to have optimum digestion. So if we're not digesting properly, or if our diaphragm's really tight, we're not getting optimum blood flow to and from the lower part of the body or the pelvic area, but we're not also getting optimum digestion. So where it's very interesting to look at, I guess, is things that can affect digestion are often stress and trauma, which also, that's not the only things, but that also influence, our fertility and our birthing experience. So it's a beautiful technique. It's an external, gentle, non-invasive massage technique, bodywork technique.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. No, I love that. And what you say just so resonates with me, and the yoga that I teach and practice.
Yeah.
The yoga I teach is a Japanese style. It's very therapeutic. It's based on the principles of yin and yang and the five elements and the meridian body. And yeah, my teachers were especially one of my teachers, Lisa, she was exceptionally passionate about the position of the uterus, like you talked about, and how, it can get out of alignment. And we did a lot of yoga exercises to help realign that, and also the digestive system, like creating better flow in the belly, doing lots of, core yoga practices, which I'm, still passionate about to this day. So it's very interesting that there's that connection there. And I think there's a lot to be said about those healing arts that that they do have a lot of purpose and usefulness for women.
And I think talk therapy can only go so far, but if we're holding things on that cellular level, it helps with the movement, whether that's through yoga, whether that's through dance, whether that's through massage, to help to move or process things through the body. And for some people that works a lot better. Some people don't feel like ready, or don't feel safe enough to open up and share whatever it is that's gone on for them. And so it's a beautiful way to still not, and everything's still becoming processed through the body. We're still moving any trauma out of the body, or anything that's stuck, without having to have cerebralize it, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think there's so much power in the power of touch. Like
Yeah.
when you obviously, do this bodywork massage with your clients, what are you tuning into? Like, how do you connect to their bodies and I guess, them on an energetic, but also on a cellular level?
Yeah. So I guess it's also through doing it for a very long time. It's like I can hear through my fingers. So I
Mm,
often have my eyes closed when I'm doing the massage, but so that I can really tune in and hear what's underneath. So just say when I'm doing the other modality I do is holistic pelvic care, and that involves working internally with women, so on the pelvic floor. And especially with that, so when I'm using my finger, I'm listening, but we read the field of what is going on. So going through the physical body, but reading the field of a woman to see what it is that is causing this physical,
mm,
I guess, contraction, or this physical blockage, or whatever it is, or not even, in the
mm.
tissue. And so when I'm doing that, I guess, yeah, I listen through my fingertips, and after doing it for such a long time, I can feel the different frequency of shame, or whether it's anger, or whether it's frustration, or whatever it is, I can feel through their energy body. It gives me an indication of how to then, I guess, best serve the woman through, whether it's gentle questioning, whether it's getting her to tap in and to really feel what's going on. Does that
Yeah.
answer that
Yeah,
question?
that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've trained in shiatsu massage as well, so I understand the idea of feeling through your
Yeah.
fingertips, because that's
Yeah.
a tool of tuning into the person's body and the energy. And yeah, I think it's really powerful. You talk about shame and anger as some of those emotions. Can you share a bit more about, you know, I guess, how do we store those things in our body, and how can we release them more effectively? Because I know probably every woman, and even men, listening
Yeah.
or watching this podcast, have experienced, or are still potentially holding on to some of those things. What can we do to help people
Yeah.
to free up that?
So one of the things, so I'll give you an example firstly. So just say something like anger. That's because that's a really common thing that I feel in women's bodies. And it could come as a result, let's say, of living in a home when a parent was really explosive in their anger. And
Mm,
so you kind of contract and don't feel like you can actually even express anger. Or you might have grown up in a house or an environment where it was not okay to express any emotion. You just kept, it was just all kept at a very surface level.
mm,
Or, things like if there's been rape, which is unfortunately quite common in the women that I see, then, that's obviously going to be that rage that's still in the body. So our tendency, when we feel anything that might, like a difficult not a difficult emotion, but something that feels too much to handle, so it could be rage, it could be grief, it could be shame, our tendency is to move up and away from that.
mm,
And whether we go and build a life where we're just not going anywhere near the thing that we were shameful about, or felt shameful about, or anywhere near the thing that we might have felt angry about, or avoid any triggers for anger. So what I've found is one of the best ways to clear it is to get the woman, when I'm working with them, to come in, and I always say move towards it. So rather than our natural tendency to move away from anything that's painful, we need to move towards it, because it's actually in that and feeling it, even it's honestly momentarily. So it
mm,
might even just be 10-30 seconds, like it's a really short time. It starts to dissipate and you can feel it release from the
mm.
tissue. But the more we move up and away from it, the more it stays stuck. And we start to build our life like in quite a confined way of avoiding all these different triggers. So in the healing is really in moving towards it, but it's not, I think what I say to women as well, it's not about reliving any trauma. Or going back into the memory of what's gone on. It's about just allowing yourself to feel it for it to be able to release.
Mm, mm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you. That's deep. In a good way. Like I think, because yeah, we do. I mean, I'm a serial blocker. I tend
Yeah,
to block things off, and I've worked on this throughout my life. Um, but yeah, I totally, and I think yoga is probably the only thing that's kept me, and shiatsu, when I used to receive shiatsu massages, was the only thing that really kept me, open to receiving and not holding on to things too much. I think if I'd never done yoga when I started when I was 20 or whatever, then I would be a tight mess, I would
yeah,
be, yeah, yeah. And I think, yeah, we definitely need to, yeah, I guess approach those emotions without, because a lot of, I guess the fear is that, if I go into that space, how am I going to get out? And I think
yeah,
like where you guide them through, you're sort of holding their hand. You're like you're sort of there in that presence moment to be that intermediary, and be the guide. I think a lot of people, yeah, they struggle with emotions because they feel they have to do it all on their own,
yeah,
and they don't know who to go to. And this is something that I like to encourage people, to go and either get therapy or do something. But it can be so hard because people are scared of,
yeah.
what's going to come up for them.
And I think that's what, one of the things you said is what I hear a lot of women say, like if they go there, they're not sure, like just say the anger, will it ever end?
Mm.
Will it ever go? And it's just having that courage, I guess, to face it and feel it. And doesn't mean we feel our lifetime of anger, but whatever's present for that time. And especially with things like holistic pelvic care, I'll always say to a woman who comes to see me, whatever you are ready to come up, might not be consciously ready, but
Mm.
whatever's ready to come up will come up. We don't go around prying, prying
No.
into people's lives and trying to, pick up these huge rocks that they've placed over things just because that's what we feel like doing in that session. It's really being led by their body and
Yeah.
their field, and I'll only be able to read what they're really ready for me to read.
Yeah.
And you can't like if we tried to force someone to clear, like even if they came and went, oh, do you know what, I really want to shift this today, if their body is not physically ready to let go, or on another level they're not quite ready to let go, it won't
Yeah.
happen. And
Yeah.
so I always say, what we want is that gentle approach of that,
Mm.
let's just open, see what's to come up. Let's just
Mm.
gently approach, or gently even breathe down into our body. So instead of like, okay, breathe and connect in the body, it's like, well, no, we're not doing that. It's just that gentle breath down to connect in. So there's no force, because force will get met with counter force. So we don't want that.
Yeah. That's so
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
And I
I find
like
it.
that with yoga because it's the positions and it's the gentle breathing. It's not,
Mm.
yeah, you can't force
No.
anything.
No, that's right. Yeah. Not for true healing anyway. Yeah.
No, not for true healing. Yeah.
So, and that's what hopefully we're working towards. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, from what we've just discussed, your work focuses on empowering women to reconnect to, I guess, a deeper energy center and bring about this healing that we're
Yeah.
after. So, what are some of the issues that you find can cause problems for women in this area?
Yeah. So anything that leads to disconnection, really. So as I mentioned before, rage and unexpressed anger is a huge one. Shame, because we just want to move right away from it, or like I say to people, we want to lock it in into a door, close the door, and put lots of padlocks on, and move right away and not let anyone near that space. One of the really common things actually that I work with women is betrayal in relationships. So that can consume a lot of energy, and even if it's 20 years prior, or past relationships, because there's like a courting that still happens to that person even if we haven't thought about that person for even decades. And so that's a big one. Or interestingly enough, teenage years. So in teenage years, friendships that happen, or first sexual experiences that may have not been so honoring. There's things around like not feeling safe in the body. So if there's been sexual abuse and trauma or physical abuse, feeling that your body is not a safe space, so you'll do anything to stay disconnected from your body. And things like early pregnancy loss, and so miscarriages, and feeling that losing trust in their body or feeling, losing trust in the body. And same with termination. So something like with terminations, I'll always ask a woman if they bring that up in a session, was it your choice? Because if it's their choice, then there's there's very little, if any, energetic imprint from that. But if a woman's felt coerced into having a termination, or they've felt, there was fear attached to the termination, or perhaps they were told that their partner would leave them if they went ahead with the pregnancy, that can leave a big imprint as well. So, and often foundational years, a lot of women that I see come from families where, there may have been a lot of alcohol or drug abuse, or, people that feeling completely abandoned by parents, them not being present at all. So it's really so much actually that we can hold in that space. And so it's a lot about relationships and those sort of emotions, even not feeling supported in life. So with something like prolapse, I'll always say, have you felt supported in, around this time? We always look at the time where it started, or even how we support ourselves. So maybe all our focus has always been on everyone around us and not on ourselves, and it's just a real depletion of energy. And it's like that dropping of the energy down, and then physically the uterus dropping down too. So it's a beautiful area to work in, because there's so much there, I think, for women. And as we delve into it and we bring healing and awareness to that space, the amount of freedom, like they always look so much more radiant and so much more connected, and it's like the joy can flow again. Because if we're trying to shut off all these different parts of ourselves because they feel too painful to address, there's not the space for the joy to come in and flow. And ultimately, I think that's what we all really want: joy, inner peace, inner freedom,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, how do you work with someone, for instance, who has a prolapse? Like, do they have to then have surgery, or is it something that you can assist them with to help, re-energize the area and help restore the uterus? Like,
So there's a few things. So I believe that we really need to look at the energetics and the physical, because there's something that has also caused it in the first place. So I'd always work with a woman at looking at what was going on around that time of her life when the prolapse first started happening. And then, but also the Arvigo techniques of myo-abdominal therapy actually does help to bring the uterus into her optimum alignment, and does help lift the uterus up. In saying that, it depends on the degree of prolapse too. So, if the uterus is dropped right down near the vaginal opening, I don't know how much, body work. I think there'll have to be other things that come in place too. But my belief is really, really to look at the whole picture of what's been going on, because unless you address that, what's to say you won't have just say surgery and it appears in another area of your body. So it's just essential, I think.
Yeah. You're speaking my language there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's right. Just because we might have fixed it, it doesn't mean we've healed it, and it'll just manifest in another way, shape, or form. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Yeah. So I'm curious about the Mayan healing practices. Do you go overseas to study that, or was that something you did in Australia?
I did. So I did my first level in Australia, and actually a second one because someone from America came out and taught it. And then I went and did my certification in Belize with Rosita. I really wanted to learn from her.
Yeah, excellent.
That was pretty special. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds really fascinating. I'm curious, and I'm always interested in learning new things. Not that I want to go there, but
Well, it actually goes beautifully with yoga. And I think, because there's so much anatomy and physiology actually involved in the techniques as well. It's beautiful. You might be interested.
Yeah, maybe I will.
Yeah.
Well, there's plenty of time still.
And I think the other thing I like about that is there's a self-care massage, so you can teach clients, the self-care massage. And I think it's really important in any work that you do with people to empower them. You don't want a reliance on going to a practitioner. You want them, to teach them to listen to their inner wisdom, to really tap into their body and get the messages from their own body.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you, with the mind work, there is a self-care massage that you can teach women so that they can go home and practice that
Yeah.
throughout their
Excellent.
cycle. And I
Yeah.
like that. That's giving them the tools to help with their own healing.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. And hopefully
Yeah.
they put it into action as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, we're coming up to time, but is there anything else you'd like to share with us today that you think would benefit our listeners?
Yeah, I think my one of the key things that I believe, is in helping women in their healing journey is to learn, like, the more deeply connected to ourselves we are, the more deeply we can connect to others and the world.
Mm,
And I think we all carry the wisdom within us. So to start to really deeply listen to your own body and its wisdom. So rather than, hearing the expectations of others or what others' opinions are, just coming into that quiet, still center within and getting the answers
mm,
within. And I think that's a real key to moving forward for everyone in their life.
mm.
Yeah, because deeper connection with ourselves also just brings so much more joy
Yeah,
and
that's
freedom
true.
in our lives.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'd say. And just start looking, I guess, at and start exploring any of the places where you tend to disconnect, or where you go into reaction, or where you play small or contract, because they're the keys, and that shows you where healing's needed,
Mm,
where you go and explore. And I think that, to
mm,
me, that's, I guess, how I live my life too, and always looking, okay, that's something I need to explore more. I need to explore this
mm.
more, just to bring more connection and healing and resonance.
Yeah. So how, just going on that, then how would you, so for instance, I'm just trying to think of my own and I can think of some examples. Oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
contracted there. So I guess the strategies, would you suggest like journaling or meditation, or like how does one then sort of explore that a little bit deeper?
Yeah. So I think coming in and breathing into your center,
Mm-hmm.
and then asking questions from that place. The
Mm,
other one would be just using your breath to come down. So just say put your hands over your womb and direct your breath down. So you're taking deep breaths in, and then you're directing the energy down to your pelvis there and to your womb space. And when you get that quiet, still place, asking a question. Journaling's great for some people. So one of the techniques one of my mentors gave me is, if you ask a question and then you just write. It's like,
mm,
so you just say whatever area it is in your life, and you like write the question down in a different colored pen, and then you just answer it, but stream of consciousness rather
consciousness.
than
Yeah.
any sentence,
Yeah.
it could be just word after word. So they're the ones that I think are really important, moving the body. So I think
Mm,
when we become, something's challenging is going on, the tendency is to kind of to feel a bit still or locked,
mm,
or but there's also the balance in over moving too, because some people just move,
mm,
move, move, move all the time. But I'm talking about more conscious movement, whether that's dance,
mm,
maybe belly dancing,
mm,
yoga, that
mm,
sort of thing. So um, yeah, they're probably the main techniques, but I always come back to the breath really, and
mm.
tuning to our own selves and our own bodies and finding the answers deep within.
Yeah. It's actually quite simple, isn't it?
It's
You know?
quite simple. And watching, I think, when you go to do that, what are all the things that take me away from that? So you
Mm,
might lie down to be quiet, and it's like, oh gosh, I better quickly go and do this. Oh, I've got to make this phone call, and
yeah.
just like lovingly observing yourself and thinking, okay, wow, isn't
Yeah.
that interesting what I'm doing to avoid coming? And then you really know that you really have hit the jackpot in where you need
Yeah.
to
I get that totally.
go. Yeah. But that's what
Happens to me all the time.
yeah, yes. And I think that's the key, and the key is to really getting to know yourself,
Mm,
and where you react, where you play small, and any belief systems that you've formed that really don't serve you anymore. And
yeah.
I feel like that's the key to everything. And whether you do that, whatever way you do that, whether that's by yourself, whether that's through yoga, whether that's through body work, whether it's through dance, whether it's through whatever that is for
Mm,
you,
yeah.
um, it's getting
Yeah.
to the same spot, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's many ways to There's many roads that lead to the mountaintop. Just
Yep,
choosing the right one for you.
that's it. That's a great one. That's a great
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Cool. All right. And finally, as we're in the well-being room, I have to ask you, what is one thing, and I guess, excluding everything we've already talked about,
Yeah.
one thing that has improved your own well-being and helps you get more out of life?
So I know you said one thing we haven't talked about, but my one would be really is to watch any place that I ever go into reaction, and to get to know myself on a deeper level and learn to feel things. So for
Mm,
me, I can try to think my way through things. It doesn't work. You've got to really sit and allow yourself to feel it too. Can't think yourself to healing. You've
no,
got to
yeah,
really feel it in the body. And
yeah.
I think that's the key to me. I personally have a mentor that I work with who just helps me to stay really accountable, which I think is really important when you're showing up for clients. I think it's really important that we do our own work
Yeah, no, you're
deep
so right.
in a deep way. So that would be mine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. Thank you so much for
That's
sharing
such
that.
a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here today. It's really been lovely to have this conversation. I've probably just having this conversation makes me think about another 20 questions that I want to ask you. So
Yeah.
we might get you back again in the next 6 months or so and have another chat
Yeah.
about another topic. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, Julia. And it's been such a pleasure having you here today.
Thanks so much, Leah. Thanks so much for having me. It's been beautiful. Thank you.